The rain never truly stopped on Arinon. It fell in sheets that blurred the world into shifting shadows, drumming on metal roofs, and turning dirt streets into flowing streams. At night, the storm felt endless, with lightning breaking the sky into blinding flashes and thunder rolling across the valleys like the growl of some ancient beast. To many, Arinon was a world of hardship, but to Marin, it was home. He pulled his coat tighter as the storm pressed against him. The fabric was already soaked through, but he hardly noticed. His boots splashed in deep puddles as he carried a heavy pack of supplies on his back. The colony needed every bit of food and equipment that could be hauled through the storm, and Marin had taken it upon himself to deliver them. Some said he volunteered too often, but Marin never thought of it that way. To him, this was simply what humans did. They endured, they helped, they survived together. The settlement lights flickered weakly in the distance, blurred by the rain. Tall alien trees bent in the wind, their wide leaves shaking loose water in silver sheets. The world itself seemed alive, restless under the storm. Marin kept moving, counting his steps, steadying his breath. The cold rain hit his face like sharp needles, but he only tightened his grip on the pack straps. He thought of the families waiting for him, the sick child who needed the medicine he carried, the workers who needed dry rations, and the old farmer who had been short on fuel. These thoughts gave him strength. Other settlers had tried to warn him that the storm was dangerous tonight. They said the winds were strong enough to topple trees, and the rivers swollen enough to sweep away a man. But Marin had shrugged and gone anyway. Someone had to go. Humans had always stepped forward when no one else would, and if he turned back now, others would suffer. That was reason enough. The rain blurred his vision, but Marin moved with the confidence of someone who had walked these paths 100 times. The storm pressed at his body like a wall, yet his steps were steady. He remembered how people from other worlds often spoke of humans as fragile creatures. Compared to many alien species, they lacked claws, fangs, armored skin, or natural weapons. But humans had something else: endurance. When others gave up, humans kept going. When the storm howled, they lowered their heads and moved through it. Lightning flashed, illuminating the narrow bridge that stretched across a swollen stream. The water below was raging, white foam smashing against the supports. Marin's boots thudded on the wood as he crossed carefully, one step at a time. The bridge shook under him, but it held. Reaching the other side, he breathed out and pressed forward. As he neared the outpost, he noticed movement through the curtain of rain. A figure stood in the shadows near the gate, half hidden by the storm. At first Marin thought it was another settler waiting for him, but the posture was too still, too watchful. The figure wore a cloak of dark fabric that shimmered when the lightning flashed, and tall, sharp features could be seen for only a moment before vanishing again in the darkness. Marin slowed his steps but did not stop. He had seen aliens before. Arinon was not just a human world. Settlers and travelers from many species lived here, though few mingled closely with humans. Still, something about this figure made the storm feel quieter around them, as if the rain itself dared not touch their cloak. The figure turned their head slightly, following Marin's approach. Their eyes caught the lightning for an instant, glowing with a faint silver sheen. Then, as if deciding something, they stepped back into the shadows and vanished from sight. Marin blinked, uncertain if the storm had played a trick on him. But there was no time to search. The supplies were heavy, and the settlers were waiting. He pressed forward, passing through the gate and into the dimly lit streets of the colony. Inside, people hurried to meet him, calling out with relief. He handed over the pack's medicine, food, tools, and the settlers thanked him in tired voices. Marin only nodded, brushing the rain from his brow. His body ached from the long walk, but there was no complaint on his lips. He had done what needed to be done. Yet, even as the settlers carried the supplies away, Marin's mind drifted back to the figure in the rain. Who had they been? and why had they watched him so closely before vanishing into the storm? The thunder rolled again, and lightning split the sky. Somewhere beyond the colony lights, unseen eyes still lingered in the darkness. Marin felt the weight of it, though he did not yet understand that his life and perhaps the fate of humans on Arinon was about to change. The storm raged on, but in the heart of the rain, something new had begun. The storm returned the next night with even greater force. The colony lights flickered, and the narrow streets filled with rushing water that tugged at boots and washed loose stones into the drains. Most settlers stayed indoors, huddled near heaters and lamps. But Marin was outside again, walking with steady steps, carrying a smaller pack this time. He moved carefully, keeping to the edges of buildings where the wind was less violent. The storm pressed against him, but he had grown used to its weight. Tonight his task was simple: check on the western watchtower, where the guards had reported failing power. The rain pounded on the rooftops, drowning most sound, until a faint voice reached him. It was soft, almost lost beneath the storm. Marin paused, raising his head. Through the sheets of rain, he saw a shape ahead near the base of the tower wall. A figure crouched against the stone, one arm wrapped around themselves as if seeking warmth. Marin moved closer, cautious but not afraid. The lightning lit up the scene for only an instant, but it was enough. The figure was not human. She had tall, narrow features, a face smooth and angled like carved stone. Her skin was pale with a faint shimmer, and her dark cloak clung to her form, heavy with water. Her eyes, large and luminous, reflected the light in a silver glow. She looked up at Marin as he approached, and for a moment, the storm seemed to fall quiet around them. "You should not be out here," Marin said, raising his voice over the wind. The figure did not answer at once. She studied him, as if measuring his worth. Then, slowly, she spoke, her voice calm yet carrying a strange rhythm. "And yet, here you are, human. Walking through the storm as if it were nothing." Marin offered a small shrug. "Someone has to. You look like you need shelter." Her eyes narrowed, not in anger but in suspicion. "Why would you care?" "Because that's what we do," Marin said simply. He shifted his pack and held out his hand. "Come on. The outpost isn't far. You'll freeze out here." For a long moment she did not move. The rain streaked across her cloak, and lightning danced behind her. Then, with slow grace, she placed her hand in his. Her fingers were slender, cooler than human skin, yet steady. She rose to her feet, standing taller than Marin by half a head. Together they moved through the storm. She walked with silent steps, almost gliding across the flooded street. Marin kept his pace even, guiding her toward the nearest shelter. When they reached a covered shed near the outpost wall, he set down his pack and pulled a blanket from within. He offered it to her without hesitation. She looked at it as if it were something strange. "You give freely," she said, her voice thoughtful. "Even to one you do not know." "That's normal for us," Marin said, leaning against the wall. "At least, it should be. My name's Marin. What's yours?" The alien woman hesitated, then answered softly, "Selura." Marin nodded. "Selura, then. What are you doing out here alone in a storm like this?" Her silver eyes lowered for a moment before returning to his face. "I was sent to watch. To learn. My people, they do not trust yours. They say humans rush into danger without thought. They say you bring trouble wherever you go." Marin gave a short laugh, not unkind. "Some of that might be true. We do rush sometimes. But trouble? We don't bring it on purpose. We just don't give up, even when things are hard." Selura tilted her head, studying him. The rain still pounded on the shed roof, but inside, the air felt different, warmer, quieter. "You are strange," she said at last. "Fragile flesh, no armor, no weapons. And yet you walk into storms as if they cannot touch you. We're used to being called fragile, Marin replied. But storms don't stop us. Pain doesn't stop us. We keep moving, because there's always someone depending on us. Selura's gaze softened, though her expression remained calm. She wrapped the blanket around herself, as if testing the comfort of human kindness. Perhaps, that is what makes you dangerous. Marin shook his head. Not dangerous. Just stubborn. For a long while, they listened to the storm together. The lightning flashed across the sky, and the thunder followed. Yet in the shed, a quiet space had formed between them, something unspoken, fragile yet strong. Finally, Selura broke the silence. When the dawn comes, I must return to my people. They will not be pleased if I spend time with a human. But tonight, I will stay here. Marin nodded, his expression calm. Then stay. The storm will pass, and you'll be safe here. Selura's silver eyes lingered on him, curious, searching. She did not yet understand why she felt drawn to his presence, why his simple words unsettled her more than the thunder outside. But she knew one thing, this human was not what she had expected. And as the storm raged on through the night, the first thread of something new was quietly woven between them, something that neither the rain nor the distrust of their peoples could wash away. The storm did not end the next morning. Dark clouds pressed low against the hills, and the sound of rain filled every corner of the colony. Marin rose early, as always, and set about repairing tools in the workshop. His hands were steady, his mind focused, but his thoughts often drifted to the silver-eyed stranger who had spent the night in the shed. Selura had left before dawn, quiet as mist, leaving behind only the folded blanket. Yet Marin had the sense that he would see her again. Something in her gaze told him she was not finished with him, even if she had wanted to be. By evening, when the lamps glowed through the storm, his thought proved true. She returned. Marin found her near the colony wall, standing with calm posture as the rain rolled down her cloak. This time she did not hide in the shadows. She was waiting. You came back, Marin said as he approached. Selura's expression was unreadable, but her voice carried a cool strength. I came because I must speak with you. Last night was not chance. I am an envoy. My people sent me here to study your kind, to judge whether humans should remain on Arinon. Marin stopped in his tracks, the words sinking in. Judge us? For what? For recklessness, Selura said without hesitation. For bringing storms of your own wherever you settle. For acting without thinking of the cost. She stepped closer, her eyes fixed on him. My people believe humans will bring ruin to this world. They intend to end the alliance with your colony. They may even force you to leave. The rain beat harder between them, but Marin did not move back. His jaw tightened, yet his voice stayed calm. Is that what you think too? Selura hesitated. For the first time, her steady composure wavered. I do not know. I was certain before. But you, her eyes searched his face, as if the answer was written there. You confuse me, human. Marin gave a small smile, though his eyes remained serious. We confuse ourselves sometimes. But listen, whatever mistakes humans make, we're not here to destroy Arinon. We came to build a life. To share this place, not claim it. Selura crossed her arms, her cloak shifting in the rain. Words are easy. My people will not believe them. They see only your hunger for more land, more power. Marin shook his head. Not power. Survival. Back on Earth, storms like this one would have broken cities. But we learned to endure, to keep moving. That's why we're here, because humans don't give up, even when the sky itself fights us. Lightning split the clouds, throwing light across their faces. Selura studied him for a long, silent moment. His words carried no sharpness, No effort to persuade. They were simple truths, spoken by someone who had walked through storms without complaint. You speak with no fear, she said at last. Most humans I meet argue, or boast. But you, she trailed off, as though admitting too much. I'm just telling you what I know, Marin replied. If your people want proof, then walk with me. See what we do. See how we live. Selura tilted her head. The offer unsettled her. To walk beside a human, to watch his life closely, would mean letting herself be changed. And change was dangerous. Yet something in Marin's calm presence tugged at her thoughts, like a current she could not resist. I should refuse, she said softly. I should return to my people and carry my report. But you didn't, Marin said gently. Her eyes flashed at his boldness, but instead of anger, she felt a strange warmth in her chest. She realized she was not angry at all. She was curious, dangerously curious. At last, Selura lowered her arms and stepped closer, the rain flowing down her cloak. Very well, human. I will walk with you. I will watch. And I will judge for myself whether your kind deserves this place. Marin nodded once. Fair enough. They began to walk through the colony together, the rain drumming on roofs and flowing through the streets. Settlers greeted Marin with tired smiles and quick thanks as he checked on families, repaired tools, and lifted heavy supplies where needed. Selura stayed close, silent but observant. She saw how others trusted him, how they leaned on his quiet strength without him asking for recognition. When the night grew deeper and the storm showed no sign of ending, they found themselves beneath a shelter of stone near the edge of the colony. The air was damp and cool, but it was enough to keep the worst of the rain off. Selura turned to him, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. You are not what I expected, Marin. But one man cannot speak for a whole people. Remember that. Marin met her gaze without flinching. Maybe not. But one man can show what people are made of. Sometimes that's enough to change a mind. Selura said nothing, but her thoughts were restless. She had come here certain of her mission, but this human's steady resolve was loosening the walls she had built. The storm roared outside, but inside her, a quieter storm had begun. The storm did not rest. For 3 days and nights, the skies over Arinon remained heavy, and the colony worked under the constant drumming of rain. The settlers grew tired, their energy drained by the endless darkness, but they pushed on. And wherever work was needed, Marin was there. Selura watched him closely during those days. She did not admit it out loud, not even to herself at first, but her eyes followed him through the storm. He lifted beams, fixed broken lamps, carried heavy loads for others without waiting to be asked. When children cried, he distracted them with simple jokes. When elders shivered, he gave his own coat to them. He never demanded thanks. He never asked for reward. He simply kept moving, like a stone that could not be washed away by the rain. Her people had taught her that humans were careless, that they wasted strength, that they could not be trusted. And yet here was one human, showing something different, showing that hardship did not bend him. It unsettled her. That night, Selura found herself again at the small stone shelter near the edge of the colony. Marin was already there, repairing a broken lantern by the dim light of a portable lamp. The glow reflected off the rain on his face and the water dripping from his coat. You work too much, Selura said as she stepped into the shelter. Marin looked up with a small smile. Storm doesn't stop, so why should I? Selura tilted her head. Do you never tire? Of course I do, Marin replied, tightening the lantern's frame. But people depend on me. That's enough to keep me moving. Selura stood silently for a while, watching him. She was not used to such thinking. In her world, each individual guarded their own strength carefully, giving little to others unless it was part of an agreement. Here, This human gave freely and never counted the cost. Why, she asked at last. Why give so much, when you have so little to begin with? Marin set the lantern down and leaned back against the wall. Because that's what humans do best. We endure storms, but we don't endure them alone. If I'm strong today, it's because someone else helped me yesterday. Tomorrow, maybe I'll need help too. So we keep giving. His words sank into her like raindrops seeping into dry ground. She wanted to reject them, to say they were only human excuses. But instead, she found herself holding onto them, repeating them in her mind. The shelter grew quiet. Only the sound of rain on stone filled the space between them. Selura folded her arms, but her gaze drifted toward him again. There was something about his calmness, the way he did not try to impress her, that pulled at her thoughts. You speak as though you are certain of everything, she said softly. Marin shook his head. Not everything. Just what matters. Selura studied him in silence. The storm outside seemed far away for a moment. She felt something stir inside her, a strange pull she had not known before. It was not weakness, not fear, but a kind of temptation to trust, to believe, even though her people had warned her never to. She turned her face away, hiding the thought. Do not mistake my questions for agreement. I am still here to judge. I cannot forget the warnings of my people. I wouldn't ask you to, Marin said simply. His calm acceptance caught her off guard. He did not press her. He did not demand her trust. He gave her space, as though he understood that trust could not be forced. The night wore on. The rain fell harder, leaking into the corners of the shelter. Marin adjusted the lamp so its glow spread wider. Selura sat across from him, her cloak heavy with water. Storm will last for days more, Marin said quietly. Selura nodded. I can feel it. The air is heavy. It is as if the world itself mourns. You sound almost human, saying it like that, Marin said with a faint smile. Selura gave him a sharp look, but the corners of her lips curved slightly before she caught herself. She turned away quickly, as though refusing to let him see the reaction. Marin said nothing. He only leaned back, eyes half closed, listening to the rhythm of the rain. Selura sat in silence, but inside she felt restless. She had never allowed herself to linger near a human for so long. She told herself it was only duty, only her mission. Yet, in truth, she was drawn to this man who walked through storms without complaint, who spoke of giving as if it were life itself. She felt temptation pressing at the edges of her thoughts, not a temptation of the body, but of the heart. A temptation to believe in something she had been taught to reject. To imagine, even for a moment, that perhaps humans were not as her people claimed. The storm roared outside, but inside the shelter, another storm was forming, quiet, hidden, yet no less powerful. And Selura, for all her training, for all her certainty, could not stop herself from being caught within it. The fourth night came, and still the storm showed no mercy. The skies were black, and the ground had turned into rivers of mud and rushing water. The colony stood strong, but its people were weary. Every roof leaked, every lamp flickered, and every settler carried exhaustion in their eyes. Marin walked through the rain with his usual steady steps, delivering fuel rods to keep heaters running. Selura followed at a distance, her silver eyes sharp as she watched him speak to the settlers. The people trusted him, she could see it clearly now. Even when they were frightened, even when the storm seemed endless, they found comfort in his presence. When the work was done, they returned once more to the stone shelter. The rain poured harder than ever, as though the world itself wished to drown them. Inside the shelter, Marin set down the empty pack and wiped the water from his brow. Selura stood at the entrance, her cloak heavy with rain. You never stop, she said softly. Marin gave a tired smile. If I stop, someone goes without heat tonight. That's reason enough. Selura stepped inside fully, her face troubled. She had carried her secret long enough. The weight of it grew heavier each day, and though she had no reason to trust a human with it, something in Marin's quiet strength urged her to speak. "There is something you must know," she said, her voice low. Marin looked up, surprised by the seriousness in her tone. "Go on." Selura hesitated. Her people would call her a traitor for this. But keeping silent while the colony stood on the edge of danger felt worse. She drew a slow breath and began. "My people believe these storms are not natural. They say they are punishment, a curse placed upon this land because of outsiders. And they name your kind as the cause." Marin frowned, his hands tightening on the lantern he held. "A curse? You think humans bring this?" "I do not say I believe it," Selura replied quickly. "But it is what they teach. To them, the storms grew heavier when humans arrived. They whisper that if the rains continue, they will drive you out by force." The shelter grew still, the rain outside pounding like a heartbeat. Marin leaned back slowly, his expression steady though his mind raced. "Do they truly believe driving us out will end the storms?" he asked. Selura nodded once. "Yes. They see you as the root of this suffering. And if the storms do not break soon, they will act. That is why I was sent to watch, to measure, to decide whether there is reason to spare you." Marin was quiet for a moment. The thought of war weighed heavily on him, but he did not let fear show. At last, he spoke with calm certainty. "Storms don't follow people. They follow causes. If the weather has changed, there's a reason beyond blame. Maybe something in the land. Maybe something older." Selura studied him, her heart unsettled. "You speak as if you are certain there is another cause." Marin nodded. "Because blaming people is too easy. If storms could be driven by anger, Earth would have drowned long ago. We learned long ago that the world doesn't punish, it reacts. If we want answers, we need to look, not fear." Selura turned her gaze toward the rain beyond the shelter. His words stirred something inside her. Her people's teachings had never allowed questions, only obedience. But Marin's steady belief that truth could be found through effort, it was like a light within the storm. "What are you suggesting?" she asked quietly. "That we find the cause," Marin said without hesitation. "You and me. Together. If the storms are more than weather, then we need proof. Proof strong enough to change minds. Otherwise, your people and mine are going to collide, and too many will pay the price." The idea shook Selura. To search with him, to stand at his side against her people's fears, was no small step. But as she looked at him tired, soaked, yet unshaken, she felt that temptation rise again. A temptation to trust, to believe, even against everything she had been taught. "You are asking me to betray my people," she whispered. Marin shook his head. "I'm asking you to save them. If we find the truth, maybe we can stop this before it becomes war." Selura's silver eyes locked with his. The rain outside thundered, as though the world itself demanded her answer. At last, she lowered her head and breathed out slowly. "Very well. I will help you. But if we are discovered, I will bear the blame alone." Marin's voice was firm. "No. If we are discovered, we face it together." Her gaze lifted at his words, and for the first time, something inside her cracked. She felt a strange warmth, dangerous and undeniable. Humans were reckless, yes, but perhaps their recklessness was born from hope. The storm roared, but inside the small shelter, a decision had been made. Two souls, once divided by distrust, now stood at the edge of a shared path. And beyond the rain, hidden deep in the valleys of Arinon, something waited for them, an answer that would test not only their courage, but the fragile bond that had begun to grow between them. The following night, the storm carried a new fury. Winds screamed through the valley, trees bent under the force, and lightning struck the ridges in blinding flashes. Yet Marin and Selura walked into the heart of it, leaving the safety of the colony behind. Marin carried a pack of tools, his boots sinking into the mud with every step. Selura walked beside him, her cloak pressed tightly against her form by the wind. She moved gracefully even in the storm, her tall figure unshaken by the rain that lashed at them. "Are you certain of this?" she asked, her voice nearly lost to the thunder. "No," Marin admitted, tightening the straps of his pack. "But I know one thing: the truth won't come to us. We have to find it." They crossed the flooded paths, their lantern lights flickering in the downpour. The valley ahead was dark, filled with rolling mist and the roar of swollen rivers. Few settlers ever came this far during storms. The land was considered cursed, and most avoided it. But Marin had studied the maps. He believed the strange shifts in the storm came from this valley. As they walked deeper, Selura felt unease building inside her. Her people had whispered of ancient ruins hidden in these lands, remnants of a time before either of their races had set foot here. She had dismissed the stories as legend. But now, with Marin at her side and the storm pressing harder, the old tales seemed alive. After hours of struggle, they reached a wide clearing. The earth here was broken, scarred by deep channels where water poured like rivers. Lightning flashed and Selura's breath caught. Rising from the ground were massive shapes of metal, half buried by earth and vines. Towers twisted at odd angles, their surfaces etched with lines of faint light. The storm clouds swirled directly above them, as though drawn to the ancient machines. Marin stared in awe. "So it's true, something's making this happen." Selura stepped closer, her silver eyes glowing faintly as she studied the ruins. "These are not human, and not of my people. This is older. Far older." The machines pulsed faintly, and with every pulse, thunder rolled across the sky. Rain poured harder, as if the very world obeyed their rhythm. Marin crouched by one of the broken panels, running his hand across the strange symbols carved into the metal. "If these are powering the storms, maybe they can be shut down." "Careful," Selura warned sharply. "We do not know their purpose. If we touch the wrong thing, we may do worse than storms." Marin looked up at her. Lightning illuminated his face, steady and determined. "If we do nothing, your people and mine will be at war. That's worse than any storm." Her chest tightened. Once again, his words carried no fear, no hesitation, only certainty. She admired it, though it frightened her too. Humans carried a recklessness that could destroy, yet it was the same recklessness that gave them courage. Together they searched the ruins. Marin used his tools to pry open panels, while Selura traced the glowing lines with her hand, murmuring soft words in her own tongue as she tried to read the meaning. Slowly, they began to understand. The machines were designed to draw energy from the atmosphere, to feed on the storms themselves. Left unchecked, they would keep the skies chained forever. "It is a cycle," Selura said, her voice low. "The machines feed the storms. The storms feed the machines. It will never end unless," she hesitated. "Unless we break the cycle," Marin finished. Selura turned to him. "If we do this, we may destroy something ancient, something sacred. My people would call it a crime." "And if we don't," Marin replied, "your people will fight mine. That's a crime too. Which one can we live with?" The question hung heavy between them, carried by the roar of thunder. Selura closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her decision was clear. "Show me what to do." Marin gave a small nod. Together, they worked under the flashes of lightning, using both his tools and her knowledge of ancient design. She directed him to the glowing cores, and he used his strength to wrench open sealed chambers. Sparks leapt, the machines groaned, and the storm above them grew wilder, as if resisting their efforts. At last, they stood before the largest structure, its heart glowing with pulsing light. The storm raged at its peak now, lightning crashing so close the air burned. "This is it," Selura said. "The heart. If we disable it, the cycle ends." Marin tightened his grip on the lever of his tool. "Then let's end it?" But Selura placed her hand on his arm, stopping him. Her silver eyes locked with his, full of conflict. "If we do this, there is no going back. My people will know I helped you. They will see me as a traitor." Marin's voice was steady. "Then they'll know the truth, too. And maybe, just maybe, that truth will save them." Selura's hand lingered a moment longer before she drew back. Her voice was quiet, but firm. "Do it." With one final pull, Marin forced the mechanism open. The glow inside flared, then dimmed. A deep hum echoed through the valley and then silence. The storm above shuddered. The wind slowed. The endless rain softened into a drizzle. For the first time in years, the storm began to break. Selura stood beside Marin, her cloak heavy with water, her heart heavier with the choice she had made. Together, they had ended the cycle. Together, they had changed the fate of Arinon. But she knew the greater storm was still to come, not in the sky, but among their people. The valley was silent. For the first time in living memory, the storm had ended. The endless curtain of rain that once ruled Arinon was gone, leaving only a soft drizzle that clung to the air like a memory. Marin stood among the ruins, his chest rising and falling as he caught his breath. The machines around them had gone dark, their glowing veins fading into nothing. The silence after so much noise was almost frightening. Selura pulled back her hood, letting the cool air touch her face. Her silver eyes lifted toward the sky. The clouds were breaking, and for the first time she saw something she thought she might never see again: stars. Tiny lights scattered across the heavens, blinking faintly through the thinning clouds. She whispered in her own tongue, words of awe and reverence. Then she turned to Marin. "You have done it?" "No, we have done it. The sky is free." Marin gave a tired smile. "I wasn't sure it would work." Selura studied him for a long moment. He looked exhausted, mud covering his boots, his hair plastered to his forehead by rain. Yet his eyes still carried that same unshakable fire. She had seen warriors of her own kind fight bravely, but there was something different about this human. He carried no legacy of conquest, no desire for glory. He simply refused to give up, no matter the odds. Together they walked back through the valley. The rivers were calming, no longer swollen with endless rainfall. Birds began to stir in the trees, uncertain but curious, as if nature itself was waking from a long dream. When they reached the edge of the settlement, the first light of dawn broke over the horizon. The settlers, who had spent the night huddled in their homes, stepped out in shock. For the first time, the rising sun was visible, its golden light washing across the land. Children pointed at the sky, laughing. Elders fell to their knees, some crying, others whispering prayers. Farmers stood in their fields, staring at the clouds as if they no longer believed their own eyes. "It's beautiful," Marin murmured, watching their faces. Selura remained quiet. The sight touched her too, but a weight pressed on her heart. Her people would not see this as beauty. They would see it as betrayal. The storm was part of their belief, a force they thought eternal. For her to help end it meant she had chosen a path against them. Yet when she looked at Marin, she felt no regret. That evening, the leaders of the settlement gathered around a great fire. Selura sat with Marin, her tall form drawing wary stares. Some settlers still feared her presence. Yet none could deny what had happened. One of the elders stood and spoke. "The storm has ended. For years we thought it was punishment, or fate. But it was neither. It was a prison built long before us. And tonight, it is broken." The people cheered, but their joy was mixed with unease. "What of the others?" one asked. "The watchers across the ridges." They will not take this lightly. Marin's eyes shifted to Selura. She met his gaze and nodded. Rising, she stepped forward. Her cloak shimmered in the firelight, and her voice carried clearly. My people will come, she said. They will demand answers. They will call me traitor. But I will not lie. The storm was never sacred. It was a trap left by hands older than either of us. Together, we freed this world. The settlers murmured, unsure, but the elder raised his hand. And what will your people do, when they learn the truth? Selura's silver eyes narrowed, filled with resolve. Some will rage. Some will refuse to see. But some will understand. They must. For the storm was killing us all. And I will not let fear guide me. Marin rose beside her, his voice steady. Then we'll face them together. The words surprised her. He had no reason to stand with her against her own kind. Yet he said it without hesitation. Her chest tightened, and for a brief moment, she could not speak. Later that night, when the crowd had gone and only the fire's embers glowed, Selura and Marin stood at the edge of the settlement. The air smelled fresh, cleansed by the storm's passing. The stars stretched endlessly above them, brighter now without the heavy clouds. Selura broke the silence. When I first saw you, I thought you reckless. A human who did not know fear. I thought you would only bring ruin. She paused, her eyes lifting to the stars. But now I see. It is not that you lack fear. It is that you refuse to bow to it. That is what makes you different. Marin glanced at her, his expression calm. And is that a good thing? A faint smile touched her lips. It is dangerous. But it is also hope. They stood together in silence, the night vast around them. For the first time since her exile, Selura felt that she was not alone. The bond she had formed with this human was something her people would never understand, but it was real. The storm was over. But the greater journey was only beginning. Two peoples, once divided, now shared a sky free of chains. And at the heart of it stood a human and an alien exile, bound by choice, by courage, and by the simple truth that sometimes, the future belongs to those who dare. As the first rays of dawn touched the land, Selura whispered softly, almost to herself, perhaps the storm was never the enemy. Perhaps it was only a test. Marin looked at her, then at the golden horizon. Then I'd say we passed. And together, they watched the new day begin.